Got it. Just got it. So thanks everyone for joining. For those that were wondering who we are, so I don't know, Kunal, if you want to start with your intro.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. Kunal Chopra. I do a lot of things. One of them is I'm founder of a talent platform that was launched about 18 months ago called Getting Ahead. Getting Ahead was the result, or is the result of, as my career grew, a lot of people reaching out to me for guidance and help. And I started to mentor as many people as I could along the way, and built a talent platform because I have a belief that there's a lot of opportunity out there and it's just hard to find. And specifically in the small to mid-sized space, with employers, there's a tremendous number of employers who are looking for talent yet don't have a platform that adequately serves them. If you're not registered for the platform, the link is in the webinar. We'll share it with you as well. It's simply gettingahead.education. It's a full self-serve recruiting platform. It's used by a number of companies, and we are in pilot right now with the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, which represents 97,000 Canadian small to mid-sized businesses. Outside of that, what keeps me busy, I actually function as a consultant and an interim executive, working with organizations in insurance and higher education at the moment. And as I said earlier, I mentor a lot of people and try to help as many people as time allows, career-wise.
Great. And for me, I'm going to be leading the session. Some of you know me, some of you don't know me as well, but I'm Lukey. I'm a career coach, and I like to say that I found my purpose helping others find theirs. So my background was I was in computer science. I worked at Deloitte for over 12 years in the supply chain transformations group. And I was very much in the the talent leadership space where I had the benefit of learning about the talent recruiting side, having been the undergrad campus recruiting lead. So I literally had the list that said yes or no for anyone that got hired across all the universities in Canada at Deloitte. And I decided to do something a little bit different after I felt a little bit less fulfilled in my role, right? And a lot of the things that I do right now, I share in terms of all the learnings that I had. So I'm now a career coach, and I like to say I found my purpose helping others find theirs. And my platform is Swike, stuff I wish I knew earlier, which is basically advice to my younger self and very much focused on soft skills education, where I wish someone taught me how to network when I was younger. Because if I had maintained a lot of those relationships, then it would have been a very different life. So now I work with a lot of schools and not-for-profits and different organizations, elevating either their students or their resources, their people, to be better versions of themselves. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. And I see that some people are already sharing a little bit about them. So if you want to share a little bit about your background, for those that are new, you can also include like where you're joining from, whether you're around Toronto or elsewhere. And then ideally, what would you like to get out of the session? So that will help me kind of tailor a little bit more. So some of you might be more on the junior side of LinkedIn and you're really just trying to get into. Some of you might be a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more experts in trying to just build their brand or whatever, right? We'll cater a little bit more to the more junior folks, but if you have questions because you want to be a little bit more advanced, hey, we could take those as well and probably send that towards the end. So thanks everyone. And if you want to keep the chat active, feel free to keep typing. Feel free to raise your hand or let me know if you have any questions in between, as I want these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So as Kunal mentioned, the session is a second of a four-part series. So last week we talked about foundations, and a lot of it are understanding that the job search is really only three parts, right? All you need to do to have a successful job search is to apply, to practice interviews, and to network, right? That's what I call math, right? So you just put in the numbers, put in the reps, and do all of those three, and you will land a job. Everything else is drama, right? Oh, what if I don't apply? What if they judge me? What if I don't hear back? What if all those things? Those aren't really important or helpful, right? It's more of putting these in motion. So what I'll cover is a little bit of a 2-4, LinkedIn and building meaningful connections, which is our approach to networking. So we'll get into the tool, and if folks even want to have their LinkedIn profiles reviewed, then we're happy to do a little bit of crowdsourced reviewing in there, and you can put your profile in the chat, and then we can get to that. But for those of you who have attended one of these sessions before, the promise to you is by the end of the session, you'll be just a little bit better, if not a lot better, at using LinkedIn or at networking as well. For some of you who have followed my content, a lot of it will be refresher, and hopefully I will say it in a different way where it resonates with you a little bit more, and you'll be able to get a little bit more out of it. And for those that are new to the stuff that I teach, well, this will be very helpful for you in using LinkedIn and building meaningful connections. So take some of this and make sure you apply it later on. Does that sound good for everybody on the call? Awesome. So
Excellent.
LinkedIn. Thank you, Richard. LinkedIn is one of those platforms. I presume everybody here has a LinkedIn account, right? And is on it. Some of you new or not are not. If you want to, in the chat, if you can share a little bit about, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate your LinkedIn skill as, right? 1 being low, 10 being high, right? So if you want to do that, that would be helpful. Kunal, you want to ask something?
I want to ask an honest question. Does anybody like LinkedIn? And maybe there's a better question. What do you guys see LinkedIn being? Is it a recruiting platform? Is it a place of information? Is it a advertising platform? Is it a necessary evil? Like, what is your honest thought about LinkedIn and its effectiveness as a place to find employment? I'm going to throw this out there and then I'll give you my opinion on this. And it's just my opinion. Anyone? Richard, you're smiling. I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah. I, from my point of view, I feel it's a great place to connect and network.
Okay.
From the 2 months I've been on there, I see it from that.
Fair. Anybody else want to offer theirs?
I feel it's a good place to see how the people have like moved up the ladder and what kind of internships they chose, or like their preferences in their education. That's one side of it, which is positive. I feel now it's becoming more like this professional social platform. And when you see a lot of these posts coming up from like different people, and it's not really related to the career side of things, it's sometimes advertising low-key, which I feel is slightly problematic for a platform like LinkedIn. So that's just
interesting.
happening.
Yeah, it's fair. What I haven't heard from either of you is it's an effective job search platform, right? So LinkedIn for me, guys, and this is again just my view, and having now since launching Getting Ahead, having spoken to hundreds of people looking for work, new grads, experienced professionals, et cetera, looking at the way LinkedIn has evolved, specifically post-pandemic, I've heard this from a number of professionals, actually the same comment, that they feel it's become very social, less career focused, and essentially an advertising platform. It has its evil, it has its pros and its cons. For me, I brand it as a necessary evil. It's a tool you have to be on, but there's ways to use it more effectively as well and to get around some of that. And we're going to get into some of that today. But just had to ask the question what people believe it to be and how effective they find it. Luke, I welcome your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of it, right? So, and the challenge is there's nothing that's been able to dethrone it so far, right? So with most of the other social media platforms, like, is anybody here on MySpace? That was the dominant platform back in the day. And then anybody here still on Facebook? Again, well, some people are you, but usually it's more the older crowd that's there. Are people still on Instagram? Aren't people now on TikTok? And what is beyond TikTok, who knows? But LinkedIn, for whatever reason, has kind of stayed the course. Like there has been some different business professional platforms like Orkut and different things like that. But LinkedIn, I guess, never, well, just kind of retained it. So for whatever reason, it stayed at the top of the heap. And I find that the most helpful feature of it is the connection part of it, right? So I like to brand it as a networking event that's happening 24/7, 365. Now, the big difference between a networking event is when you go up to someone at a networking event, right, and you say hi, it's hard for them to ignore you, right? I mean, they could pay attention to someone else, but on LinkedIn, there is a feature when they send a connection request that says accept and then ignore, right, in kind of big print. So it's very easy to be ignored, ghosted, or whatever on LinkedIn, right? So as Kunal had mentioned, it is a news source, right? It is a job board, but whether it's effective in its usage of it, maybe, maybe not. It is a learning platform as well. It acquired lynda.com, so there's a bunch of learning resources there. And like I said, connection is where I think it excels most. But like any tool, there's a right way and a wrong way to use it, right? So, and unfortunately, most people unfortunately pick it the wrong way to use it. And now it has become a personal and professional branding platform. So there's a lot more ads there, a lot more influencers that are there trying to inspire and motivate and basically get the word out, right? So it's all of that and probably a little bit more and maybe a little bit less depending on what you think about it. One of the features of LinkedIn is your profile, right? So some people like to call it your online resume, right? And basically there's some best practices in order to make sure that you have a good profile that would be provided by or that would be searched for by recruiters and looked at by your future boss or peers or whatever. So if anybody is willing to, we can do a live example and kind of rate your LinkedIn profile if you're willing to put it in the chat. Then I can pop it on the screen and do that. Otherwise, we're going to use my profile. So is anybody willing to have their profile enabled? Yeah, so if you want to put it in the chat, Richard, and then we can do that. All right, so I will get LinkedIn on my screen shortly. Can everybody see LinkedIn now?
Yes.
All right. So this is LinkedIn as a profile. One of the things that you missed, well, before there, it's a social media platform. So you have your feed, you have all of your connections and all the news and stuff that they're looking at, right? So that it has an algorithm and people know how good or bad algorithms are for you. But this is kind of the profile side. So everyone has kind of a digital platform. I know some recruiters that actually will not look at a resume without a LinkedIn profile. Right, there's a bias towards that, and as Kunal mentioned, necessary evil. Right? That's not necessarily a good thing, but if you're not on there, they feel that you're not necessarily as tech savvy, because that's where a lot of professionals hang out. Right now, that's not everybody, but there are a few that I know that do it. A couple things that I would share is there's what I call LinkedIn hygiene, right? So there's a couple of basic things that you can do to change in order to just keep your profile clean and like their hair done and teeth brushed, that sort of thing. So a couple of things is I'll notice the URL. So Richard, I presume you didn't put these in there. Right? That's what LinkedIn does automatically to make you unique, right? So this is actually like a database code or some sort of address. So what you want to do for that one is you go to your profile. I'll go into mine because I don't have access to yours. You click on the view profile. You click on this public profile and URL. You hit the little pencil button. And then you hit this other pencil button, right? And then you basically get rid of that stuff. Right, so it makes it easier because it's just Richard B, Richard Bundu, or whatever it is, and now it makes your profile a little bit cleaner. It's as if you kind of comb the hair down, and it's not just flailing everywhere, right? Because this basically is a default thing, right? So Richard, you updated this profile, right, which is good. The default one is kind of like gray and blue, kind of blocks and shapes and stuff like that. So change it, and then it upgrades your profile quite a bit. Right, something as simple as going on Canva. Are folks familiar with Canva? It's kind of that editing tool, right? You can search for a LinkedIn banner and make changes. And what you want to do is for your profile, you want from top to bottom for it to make sense. And what I mean by make sense is whatever you're looking to do, be it a project manager, be it a business analyst, data, web developer, whatever, from top to bottom, it should be screaming web developer, business analyst, or whatever, right? So whatever is there, I should be able to take a look at it and it makes sense. So for me, this picture is kind of like, it looks like your corporate downtown That's type of vibe. And then it starts with like English teacher. So I start to get a little bit confused as to how these things kind of fit together, right? So ideally, this is packed, and all of the text is packed with keywords and information for the types of jobs that you want, right? Are folks familiar with the concept of SEO, search engine optimization, right? So what you really want to do is to play and work with the algorithm. You want to SEO your profile, right? So the roles that you want should be here, right? Should be here, and should be all over here in your experience section, right? And it might seem a little bit redundant to put it in all three places, but I mean, that helps the algorithm, because if it sees it here, here, and here, well, you'll be higher on the search results than someone who's not, right? And what some people don't notice, so Richard, is there a particular role that you're interested in?
Yeah, so currently I'm studying film and design. So I'd say more into like editing, filmmaking,
Like a graphic designer or
graphic
something?
design. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if I were to look at graphic designer, right?
Mhm.
So feature of LinkedIn is you can go to jobs and take a look at it. And I'm just going to pick the first ones that are here, right? Let's see, those ones are more senior. Okay, let's do these two. Those are the first two graphic design jobs that I found. And then what you can actually do is go down to the bottom, and most people don't know about this feature, is you go to the bottom of the job description, and they have this entry that says show all skills, right? And here is where you add in order to make yourself match the profiles, right? But you don't want to necessarily do it for every single job that you have, because there's a limit of 50, right? So take the top 5, 10, 20 jobs that you have, and the ones that appear most often, you include, right? So some of them are going to be more specific to a particular industry or an area, but that's what you want. Now, the other part is these are now the keywords that you want to appear here and here and here, right? Because if these are the things that they're looking for in the job description, right? If they're looking for these things, that's what you want to appear on your profile, right? And you'll get higher in the search results as a result, right? The other big section, as I start to go around, is the about section, right? So think of this as a little bit like your tell me about yourself, your elevator pitch, your cover letter, or basically, if you imagine that your future boss or someone you want to reach out to is reading this profile, what do you want to tell them? Right? So in a couple of sentences, 2 or 3 paragraphs, what do you want to tell them? Kunal?
Yeah, just want to stress, like, this point is so critical, guys. All of this stuff is algo based, right? Whether it's this, whether it's resume screening software, it's specifically looking for keyword matching. And these first sections, whether the header statement, the about me section, you need to try within reason, and still it's sounding coherent, to add in as many relevant keywords to the jobs and the industries and the functions you're looking for in these, because that is what will get you in front of queues in these systems. So this is a very, very important subject. I have spoken at business schools with the gentleman who, similar to Lukey, is a career coach and kind of a recruiting sort of advisor. He's done some interesting work in that he's actually worked with some of the largest job platforms in the world and helped them build their algorithms. And he himself has said to me and to some of the classes that we've spoken to, the first 150 to 200 words in your resume or on your profile matter the most. And that's where those keywords really need to be upfront. As many matches as you can get. That's what's going to get you noticed.
Yeah, well said. And again, people read top down, so the most important things should be closer to the top, and the less important things can support it later on. So one of the big mistakes that students make is like student at blah, 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 right? If you think about it, nobody's going to be searching for a student at blah, 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 right? They're going to be searching for graphic designers, for web developers, or whatever. So those are the words that need to appear closer to the top. Again, up here, right? So even though that's your background, start with what you want and then have And with my background as an English teacher, it makes me a better designer because of blah, blah, blah. And that could be in the second or third paragraph, right? I like to have in the about a CTA in marketing that's a call to action, where it says something like, connect with me if you want to talk about things design, right? So it's an open invitation for folks to connect with you, right? And I just like it as an interesting piece in order to get people to interact with you. And what you want to see. Oh, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I just got a question. Is there a size like with the about? Like, would you say like roughly like 2 paragraphs, or it depends?
Less than a page. So basically, if it's too long, if it takes up more than a screen, right? So generally 2, 3, 4 paragraphs at most, right?
Okay.
But keep in mind, you also want it for readability too, right? So what you can do is you can go to like an emoji site, like Emoji Copy, right? And take like circles, right? And or like graphics. Probably not graphics, maybe art. I don't know all the emojis, right? But you can take a couple of them and strategically and tastefully put it here, right? And it just adds a little bit more character, a little bit more color. And if you create like bullets, people often read bullets better than they read paragraphs, right? So sometimes less is more, right? So just be strategic about that. And the great thing about it is you can change it tomorrow. You can change it next week, right? So it's not a tattoo. It's not like a resume where you submit it and you can't take it back. This one you can keep changing. But here you also want your story. So if any of you have a little bit of a more non-traditional background, you want me to be able to understand, how does English teacher become a graphic designer, right? And how does something like nutritionist or whatever fitness training, how does that all support any of it, right? So it's one where it needs to make sense, right? For those of you who are students who don't have actual work experience, what you can actually do is put some of those keywords in your education, right? Bullet points underneath here about what you've learned, because you haven't done it yet, but you can learn about it. I recommend you go find some volunteering opportunities, right? And for those of you who are international students or newcomers, right? Volunteering is probably one of the best forms of networking, right? Because you get that Canadian experience and you beat that like chicken and the egg type of thing, where in order to get a job, I need experience. In order to get experience, I need a job. Well, at least here you have some experience. And the great thing is the people that are volunteering with you, they're passionate about that cause, they're supporting about that cause. And what you don't realize is that person, their sister or brother works at the company that you want to join. Or not their sister or brother, but their roommate or their second cousin or that sort of thing, right? So one of the benefits of networking is you're not connecting with the person, you're also connecting with the 10, 100 people they're connected to and the 10, 100 people they're connected to, right? So if you connect with Kunal, he knows a lot of people and they can be very, very helpful. So it's that network event, like literally from that perspective. And one of the other things that you want to be mindful of is be nice to everybody. Because just like people remember you for being nice, people also remember you when you're not so nice and you brush them off and you ignore them or you did whatever. So just be mindful of that as well.
Luki, I got a question as well. Like, I'm someone who has like backgrounds in a lot of different areas. I've worked in fitness, I've worked in coaching, and now I'm studying film. Is it like important to mention relevant like experience, or should you like list all of like what you've done in the past and add that to your profile?
Well, it's got to be relevant to this stuff.
Right.
Right? Because if ultimately you want to be a graphic designer, how does being a fitness trainer help with packaging design or with concept development? And how does being a teacher help with social media advertising?
Sure.
Well, in some cases, not a lot. On other cases, very much so, right? Because you can talk about how being an English teacher allows you to communicate better and things like that. And being in the gym and health and fitness has given me a bit of breadth to develop better concepts. And I've been in inventory management at a grocery store, which allows me to examine every single package of every single product that I know. So it's given me an appreciation of what works well, what sells well, that sort of thing. So even working at a Tim Hortons, at a grocery store, at a gas station, all that sort of stuff can add value if you tell the right story, right? Along it. So some people ask like, well, I have a background in whatever, but I'm in Canada and I have a survival job at the gas station, Tim Hortons, grocery store, whatever. Do I put that in? Well, I usually say yes, right? Because if you think about it, right, let's imagine that I'm hiring, right, and I have two candidates in front of me. There's Lukey with whatever background, and then Lukey with that same background, but he's also worked at Tim Hortons for the past 3 months, right? So this is all international experience where they haven't made it relevant to Canada, but now I have 3 months in Canada where I've provided customer service, I've been able to help people, right? In quick serve, in retail, in whatever it is, right? Who would you rather pick to work? Well, 9 out of 10 people, 99 out of 100 are going to pick the one with the Canadian experience, whether it's quick serve or not, right? Now, it's not 100%. There's always people who look down on that and say, oh, they weren't able to do it. But if that's the case, then you probably wouldn't enjoy working there anyway. Right? So it might be a bullet dodge there. So as we can get back to the profile, the experience is often where folks start losing interest, right? Education, not a lot of recruiters will keep on scrolling back down here, but it does help with the algorithm, right? So when you follow more top voices and things like that, then your feed gets adjusted, same with groups and companies and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the key pieces are the like hygiene. Oh, one thing that I didn't mention is you want to have a picture, right? And it should be a picture of you, not of your cat or a logo or something, right? And it doesn't really matter what picture. It has to be a professional looking picture, not one taken by a professional. I know some people that use their passport photo. That is probably the worst photo to use because on a passport photo, you're not allowed to smile, right? And if you look at most of you on a passport photo, you actually look quite scary, right? And you want your picture to be someone that's approachable. Like, hey, I don't mind working with this person. I wouldn't mind working. Versus if you think about it, would you rather work with this guy or this guy? Right? Something as simple as not a smile can change someone's approachability significantly. Right. So those are the basic features. And then obviously, if you want to get more active and use activity, then that would be really helpful. Right. So just moving on with some of the material, we had some, I think I saw some other profiles in there, but we'll, if we have more time, we'll get to it a little bit later. But I want to talk a little bit more about like connecting and leveraging the profile, right? So one of the best practices is to always send a connection request. Right, so LinkedIn has a feature when you hit connect, there's a little feature that says add note, and you want to make sure that you do that. And the reason why you want to have one, it's the in real life equivalent. If you don't send one, right? If you don't have a note, it's the in real life equivalent of going up to someone at a networking event, tapping them on the shoulder, and then going, and it's kind of like, yes, can I help you? What are you doing? Because you're a random person, right? They have no idea. Are you going to spam them, scam them, or whatever? So that note will really help. Now, if you notice this little feature, LinkedIn unfortunately added a filter, right? So they've limited you to like 10 every month, I believe is the number, which is very challenging now. So they have to make their money somehow. So it's tempted a lot of people to buy the premium subscription, right? I haven't really found a workaround in it. The only way that I've found to kind of alleviate it is if you have a common connection, you can ask the common connection to create a little group chat to add you and the other person. And then that is an automatic introduction into there, right? But obviously that assumes that you know a person in order to make that connection. So unfortunately, I have been able to do everything without a LinkedIn profile, but I might, with LinkedIn Premium, without LinkedIn Premium, but I may actually subscribe to one at some point in time as well. So Kunal?
Any quick thoughts from the team, just overall? You're interested in connecting with somebody, don't know what to put in your note. How do you get around that? I'll give you guys some ideas and stuff on what I do. Any thoughts?
We got some slides on that later on now.
All right, awesome. I haven't looked at them yet, but keep going. We'll come back to it.
Yeah. And what you want to do on the profile is to be responsive, right? So I know some people are on like the social media detoxes and they don't have the notifications on because they want to stay more in the zone. But especially if you're on the job search, that you want to be responsive. So I had someone who says, oh, I just check my LinkedIn on the weekends, right? And I turn notifications off otherwise. And what happened is they got a message from a recruiter on Monday saying, hey, we'd like to invite you for an interview on Friday. And then they check their messages on Sunday. Right? So it's like, oops. So if you are active on the job search, if you're not, then it's really up to you. But if you want to connect, then be responsive. Another thing is that LinkedIn actually has a little bit of a UX flaw that I found. So even if you send the connection requests, so you send a message, hey, Lukey, how's it going? We met at the Getting Ahead session. Would love to connect and learn more, right? And then I hit, on my side, I see two buttons. It says accept and ignore. So I hit accept. So on your side, it says accept. It's got your message there and you're like, yes, okay. And you're waiting for me to reply, to send a message. And you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. Like, why is Lukey ignoring me? It's like, well, Lukey's not ignoring you because Lukey said accept. So his response was accept. And now the ball is on your court to reply to that, right? So LinkedIn, and I've actually encouraged them to do that, have something more explicit to say like, your connection has been accepted. Why not continue on the conversation or something? So once they accept, make sure you continue on the conversation because it's not up to them to continue. Now, if you connect with me, I usually do because I know of that feature, but for most folks, they won't know. So if you're waiting for them to reply, you might have a whole bunch of acceptance. So you're like, oh, nobody's replying. Well, they did. You're just not continuing the conversation. So how rude of you. So just understand that. And another item is to connect anyways, right? So for those of you who know Wayne Gretzky, he has a quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And my follow on is you're already not connected with them anyway. So the worst that can happen is status quo. And the best is they can say yes, because you're already not having coffee with them. You're already not connected with them. So if they ignore you, same thing. But what if they say yes, right? And then the last is to engage, where some folks just use messaging, but if you want to get out there, then liking, commenting, and sharing can really help you get noticed, right? It takes a bit of time, and then the algorithm will start working for you instead of against you, right? So a couple of bad practices is if you've seen my material on networking, you want to think of networking or the job search almost like a professional marriage, right? Two people kind of getting together and wanting to be close for a certain amount of time, right? Unfortunately, what most people are doing when they're networking is they're going to each other, hey, how's it going? Would love to learn more about your background. Would you like to marry me? I'm like, wait, I don't know a thing about you. This is your second message, your third message to me, and you're already asking me to make a lifelong commitment or a long-term commitment to you? No, thank you, right? So these are some messages where they basically didn't build a meaningful connection, right? They try to slip right into my DMs, that sort of thing, right? Because to me, the answer to every how to network question is to care. Right? So you want to care for the person on the other side, right? So this person, first time they messaged me, I'm a student in my final year with 2 years of software dev experience. Would you be able to help me get a job? Again, never met them before. They just sent this to me. And it's the equivalent of saying, hey, I'm young and eligible and have some qualities that would make me a good husband/wife. Would you help me find someone to marry? Right? And it's almost the same thing. So we did some bad practices, good practices, we did some good practices. And now I want to share a little bit more about the foundations of networking in general, right? So my approach, some people have this bad connection between networking, the word networking, it sounds very like sleazy, sounds very like salesy and all that. So I don't like to call it networking. I like to call it building meaningful connections, right? Wouldn't you all like to build a meaningful connection? Wouldn't you all like to have more friends? Yeah, so that's kind of the perspective or sentiment that you want, right? And my approach is it starts with connections, and then you make them meaningful, and then you build it over time, right? And the foundation of it is you need to have the right mindset, right? So for those of you out there, are any of you introverts? Are any of you extroverts, right? So usually the outgoing folks, the extroverts, right? They're the ones that are known as good networkers and what have you. It's the introverts that don't want to connect, right? But what people don't appreciate is there's a difference between being an introvert and being shy. They're not the same thing, right? So I actually call myself an outgoing introvert, right? I used to be a shy introvert, but now I'm an outgoing introvert. Because what an introvert means is you get your energy from a small group of people, often by yourself, right? An extrovert gets their energy from large groups of people, being around a ton of people, right? Being shy, on the other hand, means that you don't want to initiate. You're a little bit more reserved and passive, right? Whereas being outgoing means like, hey, I'm the first one to say hi, and I come up to you and go after it. I actually know some people who are shy extroverts, which sounds a little bit weird, but what happens in those situations is they don't want to make the first move, but once they are, they're the life of the party. You want to talk to everybody, right? Whereas me, I don't mind initiating, but I would rather be in a group of 1, 2, 3, 4 than in a whole presentation of like 100 people, right? And for me to recharge, right, I have to do just that. If I'm in a networking event with 100 people, I need a couple of hours to myself right, in order to recover afterwards. So just understanding that. And the whole point of that is just to understand that even if you're an introvert, you can do it. Right? You can be good at networking if you learn the appropriate skills in order to do that and practice them, right? One of the interesting notions is that comment in the middle, because some people have this notion that, well, everybody's out to get me, they're all judging me, they're all looking at me, and having all these negative notions of me. So the quote is attributed to Albert Einstein, where he says, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe, right? So for those of you who always think that someone's out to get you, the universe is very hostile, and that's a challenging universe to live in. If, on the other hand, you believe everyone's around to help me, I just have to figure out how it is, then the world and the universe becomes a little bit more of an interesting place, right? And keep in mind, imposter syndrome happens, right? So you just have to be mindful of that. And the goal is to make progress versus being perfect, because some of you don't realize that networking is a skill, right? And like every skill, with practice, it gets better, right? But it also means that when you start, you're probably going to suck, right? So does anybody here know how to play the piano? Some people know, a lot I've seen knows. Anybody know how to play the violin? Right? No, right? Most people don't. So if I were to say, if I were to give you a violin and I said play, how are you going to do? You're probably going to like something like that, right? So if I tell you to network, and I say network, what do you think you're going to do? Kind of the equivalent. But with a little practice, you practice 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, then it'll be like Mozart, Beethoven, or whatever, Pachelbel's canon, whatever classical symphony number that you have, right? So it's all about progress. So in order for you to get to an 8 out of 10, you need to be a 1 out of 10, a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4, and then you can be an 8 or 9 out of 10. And you don't even need to be that. You can just be a 6 out of 10, and you'll be better than most people, right? And oftentimes that comes with managing your mindset, which could be through things like journaling or mindfulness or meditation or coaching or therapy if you really need that, right? So keep in mind, if there's one takeaway from the slide, you can do it, right? So a couple of perspectives on networking is I mentioned building meaningful connections, right? And what you really want to do is network not to get a job, right? Which seems very counterintuitive. But if you network instead to be curious, interested, and look to add value, then opportunities come to you, right? Again, you want to care for the other person, right? Nobody wants to feel like a transaction, right? Does anybody like those telemarketer calls that come during dinner time, right? The one that you're being sold to and you're just being used? No, most people don't like that, right? So you want to treat the person on the other end like a human, right? So Kunal, you want to add something?
Yeah, lots to add on this one, but guys, since we've been out with getting ahead and speaking, I can share with you, first of all, I hate networking. Okay. What I like doing is building relationships, and building relationships takes time. So this belief and this view that you can instantly reach out to somebody, set up a coffee chat with them, and get a job, it's not founded in reality, in my opinion, right? It takes time and it takes a lot of give and take. Like any relationship, you have something to give, you want to take something as well. And it needs to be done in a way which is not as transparent as I'm here to take. It needs to be done in a way that is based on mutual respect, mutual gain. Um, you have a value proposition, right? And as you reach out to people, whether, and Luke, I know you mentioned, we'll get into some slides on this, offer to give, right? Whether it's an opinion, whether it's a perspective, whether it's support on something they've posted, content they've written, et cetera, advice, shared knowledge. Everybody here has value to add to somebody else and a perspective to share and something to give. And it's a great way to start building a relationship versus just networking. Think about those things as you reach out to people. And also keep in mind and don't lose sight of the fact that it takes time to build a network. It takes time to build a relationship. And go at it from a more realistic approach.
And what most people don't appreciate is that pretty much all the time, if you focus on quality before quantity, then you'll win, right? So you want a handful of quality relationships versus 500 LinkedIn connections that don't even know who you are, right? So you want to make sure that you go for quality first. But at the end of the day, like, it does take time for that to develop. You can't just say, well, how about now? Do you like me now? How about now? Do you like it now? That's not how relationships develop. So it does take some time, but there are ways to accelerate that if you're willing to, as Kunal mentioned, give first, right? So a couple of other perspectives on networking is, imagine the person you're connecting to is a friend or a mentor that you haven't yet spent enough time with. Right? That often makes the conversation a little bit easier. For those who are intimidated by talking to very senior folks, well, again, ask for advice, ask for some guidance. Maybe they'll help. Another aspect is, as a time traveler, right? Imagine they're you 5, 10, 20 years in the future, right? What would you want to ask yourself? And you're not allowed to ask for like winning lottery numbers, right? But how did you go through that process? What decisions did you make? What was the best part? What was the most challenging part? Those are tons of questions that you can ask for yourself, right? And another perspective is a detective, right? So my belief is that everybody out there has something to teach you. It's just your job to figure out what that is, right? And sometimes it's what not to do as well. So go down, yeah.
I'm going to jump in with a couple of things. Andrew, you asked a question in the chat. I'm going to read this. I like to say, hi, how are you? Or hi, how are you? ? And then I get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Any advice on how to move forward? Offer something, right? Like, here's, guys, and I know we're going to get into this. I reached out to somebody who is pretty senior in the higher education space 2 weeks ago. Haven't heard back, not expecting to. Okay, but the way I did this is they had posted an article with a perspective on higher education in Canada. They're actually involved in the industry. They shared a viewpoint. I reached out to them and said, hey, as somebody who's doing work at a college, came across your article, loved your background, have some thoughts that I would love to chat with you about if you can ever spare the time. It was not, hey, look at me, I need a job or want a job, or I'm reaching out to you for a job. It was just, if you have the time to chat, engage in some discussion. I have some perspectives on this I would love to share. Loved yours as well. Let's chat. And that's just one of many ways you can do this. Open it up to a conversation, share a view, give some feedback on something in a constructive way, as Luki said, not in a negative way. Share an opinion. all of you have intelligence and something to add to somebody else. So use that to break the ice.
And the last thing as a perspective that I want to share is another quote. And if you get to know me, you know I love quotes. But this one is basically summarized as, you can have everything in life you want if you just help others get what they want. Right. And it's a different version is, if you've heard the expression, the more you give, the more you receive. Right. It often starts by giving first. Has anybody heard the expression, the more you receive, the more you receive? No, neither have I. Right? People forget the give part, right? So the next slide talks a little bit about who to connect with, right? So you know you should connect with folks, but who? Some people ask, like, and they're people at your workplace, right? For some of you, you're at a retail quick serve job, right? So you may or may not have some of those folks. For some of you, you're in school, like classmates and professors, student leaders, whatever. You want to connect with them too. There's an acronym called FRANK, which is helpful. So friends, relatives, acquaintances, neighbors, and kids. And these are the folks that you kind of already know. And Scotiabank has a good slogan, you're richer than you think, because oftentimes you encounter so many people. And have you actually taken any time to get to know them? Because what you don't know is that person in the book club or that pickup basketball league that you run, their cousin is the senior manager of that company you want to join or their former roommate or whatever, right? Again, it's the connections and connections that really add value here. In terms of people who you should know, I use the acronym HARRY. Really, it should be YHIRA, but it stands for you. Like, who has the job that you want? Shouldn't you know a bunch of them? Ask them, what is it like? Is it actually what I have glamorized in my head, or is it a little bit different than what I think is in the movies or whatever? H is hiring managers. So that's basically your future boss, the senior manager, the director of the group that you want to join. So not the graphic designer, but the manager of graphics, the manager of design, or manager of creative, or whatever the titles they use. Then it's influencers. So these are people in the industry that talk about graphic design, they talk about web dev, they talk about whatever. And then recruiters. Recruiters are still good to know, right? But if you actually think about it, recruiters don't hire people, right? Recruiters filter people to be hired, right? So it's, if you want to hire, it's the hiring managers that actually say yes and actually say, yeah, I take what the recruiter send me, and I will give them an offer, right? And then really anyone of interest, right, in that space. And you can meet them at events, you can meet them online, and sometimes just every day, right? That person that you see every day at the park or at the gym, why not say hi to them and engage in a conversation and build a relationship? And you never know, right? So some of the messages that folks can use are these. So I mentioned there is that limit on messages, but you can send something where it's a generic one. Hi, I'm impressed with whatever. If you've interacted, then like, hi, Richard, we met at the Redefine session or whatever. you can do stuff with that, or advice. Oh, I noticed that you went to this school or that school, took this certification or that certification. Would you be able to provide some guidance, right? Any interest or commonality, right? And what I want you to do is not use any one of these. What I want you to do is take a little bit of inspiration from these, but then make it your own. Like, really look at their profile, think about how I can add value to whatever they have in the context of my curiosity, interest, and excitement about what's there, and then use that to make it your own, right? It's just like AI and ChatGPT, right? Use it as a starting point, but never use it, right? Change it up and make it really, really focused on you, right? One of the other things that people often ask is, how do I connect with certain people where I don't have access to them, right? So LinkedIn has this feature where you can connect with people multiple degrees away from you, right? And what a degree is, your first degree, so if you look at this little diagram here, the green dot is you, right? Your first degrees are the people connected to you. So there are these ones, right? Your second are the ones connected to them. So you're not connected to them, but they are. And then everybody beyond it is 3. LinkedIn doesn't differentiate beyond 3 degrees, right? And what happens is, if you're a 3rd degree, you actually cannot connect with them. it'll usually have a button that has like a lock on it. So let's see if I can find one.
So guys, while Lukey's doing this, Sarah asked an interesting question in the chat. If I spot a job I'm interested in on LinkedIn and I know who's hiring for the position on LinkedIn, should I reach out to them and send a direct personalized note expressing my interest? I would say yes. Lukey, you may have a different view on this, but I'm going to say the other thing. Do it in a way that is succinct, but can also articulate what you can potentially do for them in that job. I'm Sarah, my 20 years of experience or my 2 years of experience, whatever it may be, 20 being mine. Based on that, I think I can do X, Y, and Z for you. Let's chat. Or I would love to chat. Right? Show something which is not just, hey, I'm Sarah, I'm interested, but I'm Sarah and I can do this. And me as a hiring manager, I would be far more likely to reach out to you or contact you if I saw that in the value statement.
Yeah, I would agree that reaching out, if you do see something, but to me, it's a basic flaw in the motivation of job searching anyway, because someone who's in that position is what I refer to as doing the reactive job search, right? What I mean by that is, if you think of the job search as like a giant convention hall where everybody's looking to get a date, right? They're looking to get hitched and that professional marriage I mentioned. And then once in a while, someone says, I want a date. And then a stampede of people go up to that one person, right? But meanwhile, there's thousands, hundreds of millions of eligible singles out there. And all you need to do is strike up a conversation with that person, right? Because chances are, going down the road, that company will be hiring at some point too. And if you show that interest in them before there's even a role, then you're way ahead. At least you're in the front of the line, right? Otherwise, you're competing with that. So with this, I mean, it's not a bad idea because there's already an opportunity. You're looking for it. But the better case is you're creating the opportunities and even sharing, hey, I can do this. Would that be helpful? And I've had people where they even create roles because someone was able to add so much value. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize we needed that. But yeah, absolutely, we'll hire you. So that to me would be the ideal case how you want to get something.
And I think you raise a lot of really valuable points. And I know that this is hard, guys, because one, it takes a lot of time. Two, it involves putting yourself out there. Guys, like the job search, and this is one of the major flaws with any job board. I'm not picking on LinkedIn in particular. It's the vast majority of jobs get filled through networking and contacts, not applying online on a platform. Right. So the real value for me for LinkedIn is the relationships, the contacts, the getting your name, your brand out there and building relationships with people who are doing similar things or things that interest you, but that takes time. And I think these are things you all have to justify. The profile is great. I honestly have a belief that LinkedIn works, but it works for a very small segment of the workforce. So my personal belief on this, just having talked to a number of people, a number of companies as well, is LinkedIn works when you have a job, when you're in an industry, when you have 2 to 3 years of experience at a minimum, and now you have a bit of a network in that industry. Now you have a bit of experience in that industry. Now the algorithms are going to find you for that next job or for the one after that. Right? But getting in and getting started is really where the challenge lies. And a large part of that comes with building relationships, building your brand, and that takes time.
And I also feel that even if you don't have experience or not in that case, there are ways of leveraging the tool and the functionality in order to use it to your advantage. But the challenge is most people, they approach it in the total wrong way, right?
Yep.
One of the fundamentals for me for networking is I want folks to think of networking like farming versus hunting. Most people are trying to hunt. They're trying to find that one person, the elephant, the whale or whatever, and like, boom, yes, they got me an interview. They got me a job, right? Then what happens? Gone, right? What if you planted some seeds, right? And then you come back and gave it some water, give it some sun, take away the weeds and nurture it, right? And then, oh, here's some fruit. Like, and the good thing is you come back, here's more fruit. bigger, juicier, riper fruit, right? And it just keeps on giving if you approach it in that way versus other ways. So I wanted to continue on the third level. So if you notice this person, they have a third level connection, right? So they're beyond the second level. So I don't know anybody that's connected with them. So if I wanted to connect with Maya, I just opened it up, right? I get this message and I'm like, okay, great. I can just message her for a fee, right? But what you can do is you can actually click this more button and there's this option to connect right here, right? So LinkedIn hides it, but they want people to connect. So for those people who can find it, then you can find it, right? So just be mindful. Sometimes you have to poke around. So clicking on these buttons sometimes will help you, right? Otherwise, you have to pay. So you've sent a request and they accepted, yay, right? And I mentioned about the UX flaw, right? So you want to make sure that once they accept, you start the conversation, right? And going to, I think it was Andrew's, the connection. Oh no, it's Syra. Why were you interested to connect with them in the first place, right? Why did you want to connect? And again, it's going back to, if you connect with them not to get a job, the conversation goes better versus, well, if you connected them to get a job, what's the first thing that you need to ask them? Can you help me get a job? Versus looking at their profile and say, oh, I noticed that you went to U of T. I went there too. What was your experience like? How did you like the professors? Did you go to this building? Did you take this course? Did you, whatever it is. If it's a certification, it's volunteering, it's whatever in common, then connect with them, right? And sometimes it's the art of small talk, right? Talk about the weather, talk about current events. There are two acronyms that are common, HEFE, which is hobbies, entertainment, food, and environment, right? So what do they do? What do they do for fun? People like talking about food, travel and stuff like that. And the environment, so the holidays, the cold weather, the crazy weather that we're having, right? Those types of things, right? And two phrases that I found really helpful in conversations, and how about you? And that's interesting, tell me more, right? So if they ask a question, you answer it, and then how about you? Because you want to get that back, and then be curious. So, oh, tell me more about your experience at U of T. Tell me more about that class. Tell me more about whatever it is. And you don't even have to have known, because it's like, you went to U of T, I went to U of T. You went to U of T, I've always wondered what it's like to go to U of T, right? So you could ask about anything just by following a little bit of curiosity, right? There's a question here about your thoughts on LinkedIn Premium as essential. It depends what you mean by essential. Right? It's very helpful if you're a job searcher. There are limits placed based on the search. So I last time I looked, you can search for up to like 300 results, and then they start blurring things later on, right? So if you're not in an active job search, then 300 is more than enough. But if you're very active searching, you hit 300 pretty quickly, right? Same with the connections, right? If you're not actively job searching, 10 connections is plenty. If you are actively, 10 is not even close, right? So essential depends on your situation. Very helpful, but like it's not essential. And then you want to turn those connections and make them meaningful, right? So we talked about the small talk, getting into conversations, be curious and listen. And then what I want you to start doing is turning that small talk into more big talk, right? So you want it in the back of your head as you're having this conversation, ask, how can I help with that, right? And do what's called conversational threading, right? You want to give them information so they have things to pull on, right? Because most people are going into a conversation, hi, Lukey, how are you doing? Right? What's the response? I don't know, fine, good, right? Hi, Lukey. Instead, what I want you to do is add some conversational threads. Hi, Lukey, how are you doing? I'm fantastic. I was able to attend this workshop on LinkedIn and networking, and I was able to get a lot of great nuggets of wisdom and connect with a lot of useful people. How was your day today? Right? So if you add a little bit, now they have things to pull on. They can talk about LinkedIn, they can talk about people, they can talk about networking, they can talk about this morning, whatever. And that's your opportunity to actually guide the conversation, because they can talk about whatever they want. Oh, my day was great. I had a bowl of cereal and had some milk and granola and stuff. Well, that's not where you want the conversation to go, right? So the more that you can practice the art of conversation, the better. And one important thing is after you have this conversation, take a minute to reflect and learn. What did you do well? What could you do better? Right? Because a lot of folks, when they have these networking conversations, they do the same thing that they did the last time, right? And without that improvement, without that goal of getting a little bit better, then they're not networking 100 times. They're doing networking the same thing over and over and over versus being 1% better, 0.5% better each time, and that compounds itself and gets better. So there's a question in chat. I'd like to get some clarity. So usually send a message to HRs requesting them to connect with me and opportunities and other, just happy to hope to explore potential strategies. What do you recommend? So what people often do is they connect with the recruiters, right? Again, because there's assumption that recruiters are the ones that get you the job, right? And the recruiters, that is their full-time role, but it's not to get you a job. It's to screen candidates, right? It's really the hiring manager that gives you the job, right? So really who you should be connecting to is your future boss, right? That's the ideal candidate. And the big challenge with recruiters is, yes, they might have opportunities for you, but their guard is also up, right? They get 100 of these connection requests every day. And all of the messages say pretty much the exact same thing. So how do I differentiate, right? Like, how many people do you think already ask them, oh, would love to connect and explore essential potential synergies, right? That's probably the 14th one they got this hour, right? So you got to do something a little bit different, right? So that's where things like warm connections are super helpful because someone introduces you. And then if you actually follow up, because a lot of recruiters, what they'll do is hit accept and then they'll ignore you for a while. And it's the persistent ones that actually get responses back, right? Because they know that you're in it for the long haul, not just for the quick fix, right? That you're there for a relationship, not a one-night stand, right? If we take that analogy there, right? So just treat it as a building a relationship and things will go a lot better. So I have a bit of a challenge, if anybody's willing to accept it, is find someone that you haven't messaged in over 4 months, right? So go back into your LinkedIn, and obviously if you just started your LinkedIn connections, you might be challenged. But another thing that I encourage you to do is you can grab your phone, right? Go to your text messages and scroll all the way down to the bottom and say hi to that person, right? Because you only really text people that you know, right? And you're like, oh yeah, what is that person doing? And might be 3 years ago, 7 years ago, but you're like, oh my gosh, how's it going? How's everything? And blah, 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 right? And obviously make sure it's not like a multi-factor authentication or like a delivery notice or something like that. Make sure it's a real person that you know, but you'd be surprised at what happens when you reconnect, right? Going back to that Scotiabank slogan, you're richer than you think, right? You just have to be able to rekindle that. So for any of you who want to reconnect, right, do a little bit of check-in, like how's it going? And then share a little bit about what you're doing. Again, that conversational threading. And then if you even remember anything, it's like, oh, I remember way back in the day, you like this stuff, right? And whatever it is, it could be professional. You could share a blog post, a YouTube article or whatever. Or maybe it's something personal. It's like, oh, I remember you were really into Thai food. I found this one. We actually went to one in Scarborough, and it has like a Michelin star. It's like super tasty, right? Just the fact that you even remember that they know that, it'd be like, oh, I'm so amazed that you remember, right? So if anybody wants, you can paste in the chat for feedback or the person that you want to connect to, and then we'll get a little bit of context around the conversation. Does anybody want to take that challenge on how to make a connection more meaningful? No takers? Okay. And maybe because it's being recorded, but all right. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to move forward. The last item, so we made connections. We're starting to make it more meaningful, and meaningful, it takes practice. the art of conversation is a bit of a lost art, especially with COVID, right? A lot of folks don't know how to talk to each other anymore, right? So the fact that you are like a 3, 4, 5 out of 10 means that you're probably better than most, right? So we made it more meaningful. And the last part is to build that connection. So as Kunal mentioned, relationships take time to develop, right? It's unlikely that you'll connect with that one person and you'll automatically be friends. Now, once in a while, you do get lucky. So there's a concept of like a fast friend, because once in a while you're like, oh my gosh, it's like I've known you my entire life, right? We just hit it, we click and all that sort of stuff. But that happens maybe 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 people, 1 in 10,000 people, right? Now, you might be lucky and it's that person is the 12th person you meet and the 27th person you connect on LinkedIn, but you can't rely on it, okay? So you want to keep track of it over time. So take some notes about the conversation, the coffee chat, the event that you just went to. And if you have a CRM system, customer relationship management, it could be as simple as an Excel sheet. It could be a calendar invite that you put in to remind yourself every 5 months, every 5 weeks, whatever it is. And what I encourage you to do is set a calendar invite, put everybody's contact information here, and set it to repeat every 5 months, right? So you'll get a pop-up in July that says, boop, reconnect with Lukey. And you're like, oh yeah, what is Lukey up to? And then it'll pop up in December 2024, boop, reconnect with Lukey. Yeah, what is Lukey up to, right? Because if not, then you'll wish you had, because I'm going places and doing things, right? And same with Kunal, right? He's going to be building this getting ahead empire and helping so many people along the way that you'll wish that you were along for the ride, right? And you calendarize it because as good as your memory is, will you actually remember to connect with me in 5 weeks, in 5 months? Probably not. So putting in a bit of a system will help, right? And ideally turn that conversation, that exchange into a coffee chat, virtual chat, where you're able to connect synchronously, right? In person, right? It doesn't have to be for coffee. It could be tea or juice. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be through Zoom or whatever, right? And then occasionally, every couple of weeks, a couple of months, give them an update, right? What are you up to and what are they up to? And then see who replies. Now, I had someone call me out. It's like, Lukey, I noticed you have like 10,000 connections, right? Does that mean you message each and every one of them? And I say, yes. So in the past 12 months, I have actually messaged every single one of those people. Now, the challenge is, or the benefit to me is most of them don't reply. So I only get maybe 10% of them actually engaging in conversations, right? And we try to build them. Some of them are better, some of them are not. So it benefits me because if all 10,000 replied, I'd be like drowning. But it's beneficial that not all of them reply. And what I encourage all of you to do, and Kunal mentioned this several times, is to think of how you can add value, right? What is your value and how you can help them? And I have a systematic way to do that, right? So the simple thing is whenever they speak, whatever they say, how can I help with that, right? And I actually have 5 levels of adding value. I use the acronym ARCS-T, A-R-C-S-T. The first level is attention, right? And that's where most people stop. They connect with someone and say, oh, tell me about your life journey, your story, about your transition from here to here. Tell me about what you like about your job. What is the best part? Okay. That's like a level 1 connection. That's very superficial, right? But you can level it up by giving them a resource. Oh, I remember you mentioned this book. I read a similar one. What do you think about this one? Have you looked at this YouTube video, this blog post, this podcast, this whatever it is, right? And you were thinking about them in order to do that, right? That's level 2. The third level is a connection, right? And the reason why it's a connection is you need to have that connection first and have already incubated it in order for you to connect them with that other person. But it's like, so the reason we're even here is one of my friends. So a gentleman I met way back when, remember how I said I was reconnecting with folks? I sent him a message 9 years ago and I forgot to reply. So as I was going through, it was like, oh my gosh, Michael, I'm so sorry. I totally missed this message and hope you're doing well, right? And he replied back saying, like, Lukey, if you're messaging me after 9 years, then we probably should connect. So I had lunch with him and we were sharing a little bit. And he says, oh, there's this guy, Kunal. You have to connect with him, right? And then Kunal and I, we kind of hit it off, and that's kind of the genesis of this. Now, does that happen every day? No, but in order for it to happen, you have to actually do it, right? So incubate those connections. And then the fourth level is skills, right? The skills is, what can you do? What can you bring to the table? So Prakar is great at marketing. It's like, I can help you with a social media post. I can help you do some video editing. I can help you do that, right? And they're like, oh, okay, that's okay. That's great. I would appreciate the help. So that's another thing, and that's based on you. Can you do research? Can you create a YouTube post? Can you share it with your network? Can you do whatever to help them get what they want? And the last item is your time, because if you don't have any of those other ones, then take an hour, take a weekend, and learn how to do anything for that person, right? So those are different ways to add value. And usually it falls in one of those categories. And if there's another one, I'm happy to add to the acronym. And at the very least, as I mentioned before, reflect and learn, right? What did you do well? What could you do better? And you can actually do it retroactively. So the last time you talked to someone, what did you do well? What could you do better? Like the yesterday's conversation, last week's, last month's, last year's, right? So if you're at an event, go through every conversation in your head. It's like, kind of screwed up that one. Oh, this one was not bad. Oh, I should really do this every time for my next conversations. And when you do that, you get a little bit better each time. So that's the build side. And if anybody wants to do the build challenge, right? If there's someone that they want to further the relationship, maybe they've already had a coffee chat and they're like, well, how do I add value? This is something that we could potentially brainstorm, right? But in the interest of time, I want to move forward. We have a few more slides to cover. So that's essentially the build meaningful connections approach. Make connections, make them meaningful, and then you build over time, right? But what I encourage you to do is think about your goals. Like, why are you even connecting? Well, I told you to connect not to get a job, and instead be curious and interested, right? So if you can switch that, flip that switch, then conversations go much better, right? And ideally, the goal should be to eventually have some sort of virtual chat, virtual coffee, that sort of stuff, but really make it about quality, and then you can expand the quantity, because yeah, they're not always going to be replying, right? But the other part is, well, there needs to be some quantity in there, because you send a message and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then they reply 3 days later, and you reply and you wait and you wait and you wait. But during that time, you might as well connect with someone else. You might as well say hi to someone else, and you might as well reconnect. So there is the time, 10 a day, right? A whole it says my connection is unstable, so hopefully folks can still hear me okay.
Luki,
If you attended our session
you're cutting, bud.
last week.
Luki, you're cutting out, buddy. Folks, just jump in. Can you guys hear Luki?
Yeah, I could hear him before, but it was lagging a bit.
I was hoping that it wouldn't be there.
A little bit.
Is it back yet? No?
It's a bit, but
No.
okay. So, Luki, I think we gotta fly through this.
It's a little bit better. Can you hear me now?
It's a little bit better now. Yep.
Okay, so that's building meetings and how to do that properly, but it is
Luki, we're losing you again, so maybe we cut it here, folks. Just in the interest of time and wrapping this up, just as he's now encountering some tech issues and we can hardly hear him. A few of you are asking questions online. If you want to email me those questions, I can give everybody my email address. It's kunal@gettingahead.education. Luki and I will try to answer your individual questions over email. Please keep it to one per person. Two, for those who are asking if we record these, we do. We record them. I will have these posted, I'd say in the next 2 weeks on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel for Getting Ahead, if you go to the homepage, gettingahead.education, not .edu, but .education, that's the homepage for the platform. Again, it's a fully functioning recruiting platform similar to LinkedIn, focused on explicitly small to mid-sized businesses. We are in pilot with the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses and looking to grow the platform from both a business and from a talent perspective in the coming year. At the bottom of that is our YouTube page. Please go look for the videos there. I'll also send out emails to everybody when those become available. Prakar, stick around. I think you and I have some talking to do about just scheduling and that kind of stuff. For those who, again, were asking questions in the chat, there's some important questions that you guys were asking. If you're open to emailing me the questions, we can try to respond to them by email. I think there's a few things I would take away from here, guys. One, searching takes time. Two, LinkedIn is a tool. It's, for me, the most valuable part of the tool is really its ability to find people with similar interests, connect with people, use the connections that you have to potentially get to the people you need to get to. But that in itself takes a lot of give and take, not just take. That in itself takes a lot of time and effort. It is one tool available in your overall search strategy. It is not the only thing you should be doing. And I will say this, after my entire career has been in Toronto, I grew up in Toronto, and have spent my entire professional career here. I say this to everybody I talk to. Canada is a very small place. And because it's so small, there's a lot of competition for jobs. And this isn't said to discourage you. It's said to kind of educate you on, you have to get creative. You have to use tools. You have to contact people. You have to build relationships, and you have to demonstrate value to differentiate yourself. And there's a lot of ways to do that. LinkedIn is a great tool to do many of those things on. Reach out to people, show an interest in what they're doing, offer to assist in some way, express a shared or common interest, get access to people. And the way I love doing it, and the way I've found over the 20 years of work experience that I have, and as I've gotten more senior in my career, what's worked really well for me is offering to give before I ask to take. And all of you have something to give, whether it's a shared opinion, whether it's a piece of advice, whether it's an offer to assist, whether it's anything else of that nature, knowledge that you have, offer to give. It's a great way to start an interaction in a relationship. And people are far more open to interacting with somebody who is coming into them giving than they are coming in asking. And try that if LinkedIn hasn't been working for you. If any of you want to test this, and I know Lukey's got a question up, all of you are more than welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay, and if you want to do this or want to test a summary approach or a test approach, send me a message on LinkedIn. Okay, and approach me as though we've never met. Approach me as that you weren't on this webinar, or maybe you are and took something away that was valuable. But try reaching out, and I'll give you feedback on that. Everybody good? Lukey, you have a question. I think we'll end it after that. What's your most memorable takeaway or learning from the session? Anybody want to jump in? Prakar.
Oh, well, memorable from the session.
Yeah. Am I audible, Lukey?
You are.
So one thing that you suggested at the very start, that people will remember you if you're good, and they'll remember you if you're bad to them. So basically that kind of stood out for me, because I remember I was obviously at a point of time looking to get opportunities, and I got my full-time role also through a LinkedIn networking connection only. But then every now and then I have people reach out to me sometimes, maybe who are still doing their masters or their courses, and they're looking to get some advice or wrap their head around what my schedule is like and how I landed a job and stuffs. But sometimes I guess I'm just not able to find time, or maybe I choose not to reply for whatever reason, procrastination, like I said. But yeah, again, now that I think of it in hindsight, perhaps what goes around comes around. So it's time I start giving, if I'm to expect something in return, maybe later down the years, maybe many months or years down the line.
Guys, honestly, I'll say this. It took me a long time to learn this in just life and in career in general. I fundamentally believe this, like, to the core. The more you give, and everybody has something to give. We're all smart people. We all have some experience in something in life. We have an opinion to share. We have something to help somebody with. The more you give, the more you will get back. It just takes time. And if you give without expecting to get something back, that is when this is really going to work for you. And you are really going to get, surprised by what comes back to you. Seems a bit fate driven, seems a bit out there, but believe me, it's worked endlessly for me, and really well. Lukey's tips on how to approach people, on the overall search process, on how to use LinkedIn, on how to optimize your profile, the keywords, the summary statements, the descriptions, I think are vital. They're almost basics and table stakes. You have to go down that path. And then after, what comes after is how you approach people, how you offer to give, how you build that relationship, how you ultimately get connected to the right people. And all that stuff takes time. So for those asking, and there are questions in the chat around, I'm looking for something in the May, June timeframe. My quick response would be, yes, start doing this now, but it is one tool and one way to be searching, not the only thing you should be doing. There's no one size fits all. In fact, in our last webinar, Lucas shared some great advice on an overall search strategy, and he broke down how much time should be spent on specific items in that search plan and search strategy. One of the things I shared was build a plan. Okay, build a plan that speaks to the 20 or 30 companies, within those companies, the functions or the jobs that you want. Identify on LinkedIn some key people in those teams or places, and see who in your network has access to them. Okay, and reach out to people saying, hey, look, do you happen to know so-and-so? Can you help get in touch? Here's why. And try to make connections, right? And this will help you get in front of the right people. It is one way to do this. You have to explore all avenues. And we'll post that webinar in the coming weeks as well. Prakar, if you stick around, bud, we'll talk about how to edit this stuff and get it uploaded. Everybody okay? Appreciate we're at 8 and it's an hour and a half, so won't take too much more of your time. Hoping everybody's finding this valuable. Lukey, over to
One
you.
last thing, if I can, so hopefully the connection stays.
Yeah.
Folks can hear me. Okay, so is when you do land a job, building meaningful connections and networking does not stop, right? Because what you want to do is set yourself up for the next opportunity and the next opportunity. And when you do that, you never even have to apply for a job, because the opportunities are coming to you, right? So make this a lifelong habit on building meaningful connections, cultivating those relationships, so that you never have to be in the situation ever again. Because you know how painful it is to be able to look for that job. If you're always staying connected, then sometimes these opportunities come to you that you're like, oh, I never even thought about that. But it's because I stayed connected with that person every couple of weeks, couple of months. I shared some useful information for them, and I was always them and giving without the intent to receive. And oftentimes, the universe has ways of giving back. And if you don't believe in like karma and fate, because of whatever, I say it's physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you give, the opposite is receive, right?
The other thing I will say, and I've said this to so many people over years, Prakar, you can stand witness to this. When you do end up in a spot where you find what you're looking for or do get that job, turn around and help as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Give it back. Okay, and I guarantee you, if you do this, when you're able to, when you need it, somebody will be there for you to help. I guarantee it. Don't stop giving. Don't just sit there and take. Okay. Folks, I gotta put my 7-year-old to bed, so I'm gonna drop off. Appreciate I am the host, but Prakar, you have this. I'll catch up with you guys. I do have fatherly duties to attend to. Have a great night. Find me on LinkedIn. Please follow the platform. If you do take the time to register for Getting Ahead, please fill out your profile. We do have a number of companies on there and recruiters looking at it, and I know it's small, but it's growing. So take advantage of it as another tool in your toolkit. And we'll be back. Luke and I will touch base and shoot out emails when we schedule our next webinar, which should be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Apologies for the technical difficulties, and yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen next time.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kunal and Luki. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
Mhm.